Like the death of a season, Joe Martinez says drugs were killing his soul.
As I look at it, I carry it wherever I go.
Until an image within a picture saved his life.
I right away thought it was Satan. I really thought, I said, man, you're really walking with Satan.
This picture was taken at his in-laws' anniversary 8 years ago.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing at a 50th wedding anniversary.
And it languished in a photo album until this year, when they finally noticed what lurked over Joe's left shoulder.
There's good and evil in life. There's the good on the right-hand side of me, and there's the evil on the left-hand side of me.
It looks like a dog, but Joe says
it was a demon.
This is interesting.
We showed the photo to Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society, which has studied unexplained phenomena for 10 years.
The majority of the cases, 99% of the cases, are explainable by other means.
This one, though, he says he doesn't have enough evidence to make a determination.
That's very strange.
This photo expert of 20 years says the picture looks authentic.
It doesn't look like it was double printed or spliced in any way. There's true grain. The grain is the same all throughout this photograph, so it's uniform.
I carry it wherever I go.
The Martinezes say they know the image is real.
I always pray to the Lord and told him, look, you know, I can't do it alone.
And they credit it with helping Joe's recovery.
I'm going to stay clean.
It's a reminder that the solemn season of his past is behind him.
I have to, because I've got no other, there's not another high left in me.
Now, Joe says other portraits taken that night by other family members in the same area didn't show the dog. Now, Joe carries that picture with him and tells people at schools and at rehab centers that there is evil out there when you are into drugs. Ron and Libby.
A Georgia man accused of gunning down his romantic rival, saying it was Olivia Newton-John and Barry White who told him to kill. Thursday, a forensic psychologist gave a big boost to his insanity defense.
Hemi Newman believes he shouldn't be held responsible for murdering Rusty Snyderman because a higher power forced him to do it, a celebrity spirit who looked like Olivia Newton-John. Thursday, a psychiatrist for the defense backed up his claims, diagnosing him with a long list of mental problems, including bipolar disorder, mania, depression, and delusions like this.
He described the demon as much bigger than him, that he could see the mouth moving, and he felt that the demon was wearing a heavy cloak because he could feel the demon engulfing him.
Months before the murder, this psychiatrist says Newman claimed he was visited by an angel and shortly after had a revelation that he was the father of Andrea Snyderman's children, his alleged lover, and the widow of his victim.
He also told me that he loved Andrea and that with Rusty gone, that they could be married and they could raise the kids together.
The psychiatrist says Newman claims he was later visited by the same angel after meeting Rusty Snyderman for the first time.
He thought to himself, as he's driving, he thought, I have to kill him. And he said that from that point on, he said, I got my marching orders.
911, where's emergency?
I'm being threatened. I'm hearing demons. The demons told me to kill my girlfriend. I killed her because she stick the demons on me. This has been happening a long time. I'm going to give you my address. I got proof. I got evidence. I'm very afraid. I got a dog. This has been happening so long. Everywhere in my surroundings, all right? I don't want to get killed. I want to bring a proof. I want to talk to somebody before they come up. I want to show them. I want to
Where are you?
Check myself in the hospital. And this is very serious because
Where are you?
Promise me that they won't kill me. I don't have to shoot or kill nobody else because they tried it. Please, sir, promise me.
Did you kill anyone yet?
5, 9. Yes.
Who did you kill?
The demons told me to do it. They attacked me.
Okay.
I have all the proof. That's why I need to talk to somebody.
Did you just
I got
kill?
video footage.
Did you just kill someone right now?
I defended myself. I'm in my house.
Okay.
Nobody's in here except.
Who did you kill?
Please.
Who did you kill?
The demons made it look like it was me, but if she kicked them on me, okay? She was a girl I was seeing a date, and her aunt and everybody know that I was texting that she had.
Okay, listen. Okay.
Brought them in my house.
So you killed your girlfriend?
Evidence, please.
Okay, you killed your girlfriend? So you're telling me you killed your girlfriend for
somebody? Listen, I defended myself. There's nobody in here. The demons grabbed me. They threw me all over. And I told her, I even texted her aunt before this. She's been demonized, but she was sticking them on me.
Okay, how did you kill her?
How did you
kill her?
I was trying to shoot the demons. I was trying to shoot the demons that grabbed me, and she's laughing at me. And she had it. I even texted her aunt, yo, there's demons on you. She needs to go to the hospital.
Okay, where are you? We're not going to kill you, but where are you?
What is the objective of a demon? What does a demon come to do? The objective of demons seems to be twofold. Number one, they are here to hinder the purposes of God and extend the power of Satan.
The image on your screen now is taking over social media tonight. It appears to show a shadowy figure that some say looks like a demon. A man posted the image to his Facebook page. Since then, it's been shared thousands of times, with people debating, though, whether...
What in the world is this? I don't know if you guys can see that on your screen here, but let me do some zooming. This right here was spotted in Phoenix, Arizona, I believe. I'll show you the report in just a minute here. It's gone viral on Facebook, and it looks to be as though there is a demon. A very tall demon.
Again, they seek to hinder the purposes of God and extend the power of Satan. Understand, when we say, oh, I was tempted by the devil the other day, chances are it wasn't the devil himself. The devil is not God's equal, meaning that the devil, though he is a powerful spirit being, is nowhere near being the equal of God, which means he can only be in one place at one time. While God is omnipresent, he can be everywhere at once. Lucifer, Satan, the devil, can only be in one place at one time. That was probably one of his demons, one of his minions doing his dirty work for him. And their objective, again, is to extend his kingdom and try to hinder God's kingdom. We have to be careful to understand that the Bible identifies a real, powerful spirit being known as Lucifer that is alive and well and is active in the world that we are living in.
We were living a perfectly normal life until my son developed a lump in his neck, and I took him to the doctor. He was 13, and I took him on Friday, and when he went in, he had a pea-sized lump, and the doctor said he didn't like it. He wanted to biopsy it, and he scheduled it for the following Monday. By Monday, it was the size of a golf ball, and they removed it. And that night, he called me and he said, "Carmen, it doesn't look good," and he was crying. And he told me it was non-Hodgkin's at first, which meant he would be dead in 6 months.
We lived in New York at the time, and my mom was having to transport my brother back and forth to his chemo, and we kind of had a live-in babysitter while my mom and my dad were taking him to the hospital and getting his treatments and stuff.
I remember my brother was really sick. You know, at the time, I didn't have an inkling of how sick he really was.
We were having to drive 306 miles round trip a day. He was very nauseated after the treatments, and then the traveling made it worse. And he wasn't eating regularly, so he was dropping weight extremely quick. And I was afraid that the trip and the treatments were going to kill him before the cancer had a chance to.
You know, they were just a blue-collar family trying to make it. And it was pretty expensive from what we remember, and I just needed to get closer to where he could have his treatments.
So I discussed it with my husband, and we decided to rent a place in Connecticut closer to the hospital where he was being treated. And in doing so, I was having trouble finding a place that would rent to 4 children. I had passed an old colonial with a for rent sign. Well, I stopped, and I went upstairs and looked around, and it was a very nice house. I was impressed. I didn't think there was any way I could afford it. And I contacted the landlord, and it was affordable. He agreed to rent to me, and I was ecstatic. And we went home and got prepared to move.
When I first came in the house, my brother was showing me some of the weird things, like the room where they made the headstones and the footstones and the body lifts, and that's kind of how we were putting things together, that it was a funeral home.
When we first discovered it was a funeral home, I went to the landlord and I discussed it with him. We would have lost the money we put down for a deposit in the first month's rent, had we have backed out.
The house across the street used to be Hallahan Funeral Home. It was Hallahan Funeral Home when we moved in, and has been since the 30s, maybe earlier.
The Hallahan family owned the house as long as I could remember. They had the funeral home. They lived upstairs. Very, very nice people.
Well, I worked in all the funeral homes in Southington. At some point in time, I'd get a call to go in and do a corpse's hair and makeup.
He needed help occasionally to go retrieve bodies from the hospital morgue. And he came over once in a while when I was around, and he asked if I could take a ride with him in the hearse to go pick a body up in the morgue.
When you walked to the bottom of the stairs, there was a big open room, and it had a counter that went completely around the room. That was the south coffin room. That was my bedroom. In the north coffin room, it had big metal pipes sticking out of the wall, and that's where the coffins were placed. And those were the more, I guess, expensive coffins, and they were on display for people to purchase. There was a storage room off to the left. You walk in that room a little bit past the furnace, and there was a blood pit in the right corner that went down, and that's where, back in the day when they embalmed people, they would have on a table above it, and the blood would drain down into the pit. There was a bigger room, and that's where the coffin lift was, that actually they lifted after they put the bodies in the coffins. They lifted them up through the floor to the display area.
When we started to move in, I went there with Matt one time just to let him pick his bedroom. The kitchen had a really nice cobblestone tile floor, and I went to put the mop to the floor, and the water turned this deep red, and it was thick, and it had a putrid smell. And there was a carpenter woman still in the house doing some crown molding. And I went and got her and I said, look at the floor, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And she kind of squatted down and looked at it and left and never returned.
My family had my parents were going through a divorce. And just Aunt Carmen was always, through the years, kind of like a second mom. And she knew that we were going through hard times, and she just called, and it was set up that fast, you know, just come up and stay, we've got room. Great.
The house was, all in itself was scary looking. It had a very scary feeling when you walked in.
They were living there full time, and my dad was commuting on the weekends. He would come in Friday night, stay till Sunday night, and then he'd leave Sunday to go back, be back at work Monday morning.
Me and Matt were very close. He took me downstairs into the mortuary, and we kind of hung out on the gurneys down there. There was a separation from upstairs to downstairs. The basement always had its own feel, its own emotion.
Immediately, Matt heard his name being called from the basement the very first day in there. And he told me that. And I was concerned, knowing what was going on to his head and neck, that the medication, the treatments were causing him some mental issues.
When we first moved in the house, it was pretty much the same way it was when we lived in New York. Me and my brother got along great. You know, the family got along great. And me and my brother started telling my parents stuff that was happening in the house. And my parents didn't believe us. And my dad would get mad at my older brother, saying that he was putting stuff into our heads. And my brother started to get a little bit more withdrawn as we lived there longer, because he was seeing more, and it was affecting him a lot more than it was affecting me.
He had a journal or a notebook that he would write poems and letters and notes, and just, he would jot anything down, and a lot of it was really dark and enough to make me go to my Aunt Carm in regards and worry. Within weeks of being there, I was already pretty upset and worried that Matt was not doing well.
But you know, as a mother, you expect your teenager to start going through that stuff about that time. And I knew that him having to face his own mortality at a very young age could cause him to want to live fast, thinking that he wasn't going to live another year. But his personality continued to take a darker side.
He had gotten pretty mean and just started attacking Brad constantly.
Just leave me alone!
It's okay. I remember having to break them up in fights, which would cause fights between me and Matt.
He was going to a priest once a week and a psychiatrist once a week, trying to help him through those issues. And I was hoping that it would just be something we'd come out the other end of, just like the cancer treatments.
There were a lot of things that I saw down in the basement. There were entities that would appear.
Me and my older brother were showing her different parts of the downstairs storage area, and we were going to take her into where the coffin headstones were made. And you look down, and there was this gentleman in a long gray jacket, and he was completely gray. And when he turned to look at us, he had no eyes. They were just like black, dry sockets. And he took a couple steps to us and then just disappeared.
We called them black apparitions. In the corner on the ceilings, constantly moving lights.
There was orbs we'd seen in the house that would float around the house, and they were gray in matter, and they were about this big, and they were completely see-through. It just looked like a wisp of air or maybe cigarette smoke, but it was perfectly cylindrical, and it would fly around the room, and it would disappear. It'd go straight into a wall or go straight to the top of the ceiling.
You could see something that flickered like a lightning bug, and then it's a full person standing in front of you seconds later.
There was also a little shadow figure who used to hide in one of the corners, and he'd play games. He'd stick his head out, and you'd kind of see him, and he'd disappear. But it wasn't like a shadow, like a person shadow. It was a shadow where you could see that it looked like a person, but you could see through them.
The ghost stories continued to escalate. And first it was one, then it was two, and then it was all the kids. And they would see things like a woman in the room. Then there was the little boy, little black boy about 6 in the Superman pajama.
He used to come out in the south coffin room, and he'd come out of the left wall and fly around the countertop.
He was always in his pajamas, and he seemed lost. The younger kids spoke of him sitting there and playing with toys, or he would take a stuffed animal and tell him he was going to bring it back, and he would bring the stuffed animal back, and if it were a bunny rabbit, it would be missing its carrot, or he would always keep a little piece of something that any toy he took, he would keep.
I didn't believe in ghosts. I believed in God, and I believed in the devil. But I believed that the devil was someone that put bad thoughts in your mind. I didn't know he could reach out and slap me.
There was another night when me and my brother were awoke in the house, and I had one of those little remote control robots, and there was 3 guys standing over by our dresser in long black trench coats, and they were messing with the robot. And my brother said something, and the robot just went flying across the room and hit the wall and broke, and they were gone. So me and my brother started screaming, and my dad came down with the shotgun.
I saw a broken robot and a few toys that were smashed.
And he believed us on that point because the robot was actually laying on the floor broken. So he couldn't say it didn't really happen. We used to leave the bedroom lights on downstairs in the basement, and of course that caused the electric bill to go through the roof.
When my husband saw the electric bill and everyone was sleeping with the lights on, he just removed the lights out of the basement where the boys were sleeping.
Well, after he pulled the bulbs out, one night I was laying in bed and my sister came down the stairs. And she started flicking on the light switch downstairs. And I said, "Sis, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be down here." And I got up and I chased her up the stairs. And I chased her into the living room. And my dad and mom were sitting there, and they said, "What are you doing out of bed? You need to go downstairs and go to bed." And I said, "Well, where's my sister at? She just was downstairs turning the lights on and off." And they said, "No, she's in bed. Go look and see for yourself." And I walked in there and I looked, and my sister was sleeping. And I was walking by my dad, and he said, "Well, quit messing around, because you know I took those bulbs out anyways."
There were crucifixes on both sides of the door jamb that had been there for many, many years. They were discolored, and you could tell that they'd been there for many years. They started disappearing one at a time. Most of the activity stayed in the morgue until those crucifixes disappeared. And as they disappeared...
That
scared the crap out of me.
How can that possibly have just happened like that? Are you okay, Carmen?
I'm fine.
It didn't hit you?
No, it just scared the crap out of me.
Something is really cold in this room. I want to get out of this room right now.
Okay. We're giving recognition. This kind of thing happens. The best thing to do is get through it as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And then everything will go back to normal. My husband didn't believe it. He thought it was mainly Matt's fault, that he thought that he was inciting the stories.
Before my parents believed the stuff that was going on in the house, we tried everything we could to make them believe that what we were saying was true. There was just no tangible evidence. We couldn't take a picture because we didn't have cameras. You know, we tried recording them on little kids' recordable things, and people would say it's just static.
No, I didn't think there was anything wrong with the home. I thought something was wrong with Matt, and I put him in a mental hospital. And that was when another hurdle that was very tough. They came with an ambulance and took him away. And then when we got there to the hospital, they put him in a cot that was basically a straitjacket in a room the size of a closet. And they were going to shut the door, and they wouldn't let me speak to him or be near him. And they said, "You have to leave." And he's screaming, "Mom, don't leave me. Mom, don't leave me." And the last thing he said is, "Now they're going to come after you." Shortly after I had Matt put in the hospital is when things escalated.
There was a man that used to appear in my room after my older brother moved out. And he was one of the more scarier things that I've seen. He was just a head. He had long hair, but he had a wicked scar that came down the center of his face, and this whole side of his face was smooth, kind of like metal. And he just had a circle for an eye. It didn't have any color, any pupil, or anything. And he would just start flying around the room.
I went to the refrigerator, hungry, just searching for something to nibble on. 20 minutes before, it was fine. I went back, and it was just rotted and corroded. How does an apple go from being something I just bit out of to being rotted and nasty? I would have never picked that up to eat it because it would have just bled out in my hand.
One night, my niece Tammy came into the room, and she said, "Aunt Carmen, it's happening again." The curtains flew up, and as I pushed her back, I could see the perfect imprint of a hand underneath her shirt. All 3 knuckles, the bone from the wrist, the outlines of the fingernails.
It was like 1,000 hands just in wind and just voices and just horrible noises.
And I called the church, and they said, "Say the rosary and call me in the morning."
And we commit to doing that. And I'm wearing the rosary as a necklace, as I did constantly, all day, every night.
And it engulfed us. This black cloud is what I call it.
And the rosary beads just lifted up.
It lifted, levitated off her chest, and shattered. So I ran into the bedroom and jumped on the bed, and I told my husband that the house was haunted.
We did start sleeping on mattresses and air mattresses in the living room as a community so we could have, white light on us, because when there was a white light present, it didn't mess with us. And we felt safer sleeping in groups.
Which was kind of cool because it felt like we were all camping out and we were all together, so I wasn't as scared.
There were a lot of times that the presence would be so strong, you could feel it. You could be running away from it and it would be in your face the whole time, just that close. You could smell it, feel it, know it was there, it let you know it was there.
It was almost like we were ambushed, is the best way I can describe that to you.
The main one that I really remember was Aunt Carmen was in the shower. It was like something was alive in the shower curtain. It was wrapped around her like it was trying to suffocate her. I had to fight to get the curtain pulled away from her, and she on the inside screaming and panicking, trying to fight too.
It actually happened to my husband as well. It liked to attack you when you were alone. And the bathroom was the perfect spot for that, because that was the one place that you always went alone.
Carmen would go under a lot of attack. She would get dragged into this very dark, deep place.
She would just hit the floor, just pass out.
And she couldn't move, she couldn't talk, there was no reactions whatsoever, so I knew she was into something very deep.
There was only darkness, there was no light. And each time it was a little different.
It was like something was trying to take her over or control her or hurt her.
And I ran into different beings.
We would be over her with Bibles and rosaries, crying and praying. Her hands would be ice cold.
And the next thing I would know, I'd be back in my body and I'd be on the floor. And there'd be people around me saying prayers. And I'd be wet from holy water.
Finally tonight, Chapter 2 of what some are calling a real ghost story. You may recall our telling you about what some call a haunted house in Southington. Well, something's afoot there again, and Elizabeth McGuire brings us the latest.
I'm still afraid of this house.
Well-known ghost hunters Ed and Lorraine Warren were called in after family members claimed they heard mysterious voices and saw apparitions. The house is a former funeral home. Pulleys that used to lift coffins are still in place. A table once used to prep bodies now holds laundry.
Each night for weeks, Carmen has laid out mattresses in the living room. The family and the investigator sleeping together for safety and to keep a close watch on what may exist in this house.
The Warrens encouraged us to go public. Basically, they said that it would get the church in quicker. But my husband was really getting tired of all the people being in the house. He was coming home from work tired, and there's 6 people in the house. And he said, well, if this will get it over faster, fine, go public. And that's what happened, and I don't think that he understood the ramifications. I know I didn't, of what going public would do to our children.
When the story first came out, we had to go public. It was kind of embarrassing, and I was pretty angry at my Aunt Carm, hoping there would be other ways because I was in high school.
Things turned really bad. People that I hung out with, you know, all my friends stopped hanging around me. There was a couple kids who actually picked fights with me, and I wound up fighting a couple times because, you know, they were saying that I was crazy, my parents were crazy, and crazy parents cause crazy kids.
It came to that point where we knew the church was going to sanction the exorcism in that house. Now, this has been shrouded with so much doubt. People have said there was no exorcism that was performed in there. I was involved with it. I was involved with the evaluations. I was involved with several of the clergy members.
I can't give you the names, and I was actually had to sign a release saying that I would never divulge the actual ritual. There were 3 priests and 3 deacons. There was a strong man and a secretary to take notes.
I wasn't allowed in the house. I was too young. It was too dangerous for me to be in the house or around the house when it happened, so I stayed away with a friend.
They had brought in some religious relics, one of which was a Madonna, and they were placed in various places throughout the house. They spoke the Mass in Latin, in Hebrew, and in English.
During the exorcism, there were several different things that actually had transpired in there. We had rumbling that went through the house.
All the time. It was cold, it was nasty, and it was dark in that house.
Ed and Lorraine Warren was there. Mr. Warren got some chest pains. I was very concerned for his well-being.
And at the climax, it was like it just broke.
The second we said amen, it was like spring showed up in the house.
And that home was successfully exorcised.
After the exorcism was performed, we waited 6 days to make sure everything was clear, and we moved out.
When we moved down to where we live now, nobody knew us, and it wasn't really talked about.
My brother, luckily, thank God, he did pull through his cancer. He's got beautiful children. He's got a wife. He travels. He sees the world.
It's room 209. Amy says nobody's checked into that room, and there's reports of screaming coming from that room.
Ghosts are not ghosts, but they are actually demons. And how do demons actually masquerade like ghosts? Your ideals of ghosts, you know, people lingering around, is nothing more than something you created out of your imaginations. And because of what you create out of your imaginations, demons feed on these things in order to keep that deception going. They remember people because they were familiar with them.
Do you know the world's most credible and amazing ghost photo may have been taken in the White House in 1950? Is the White House Phantom truly the world's most amazing ghost photo?
Is the White House haunted?
Yes, it is. And it is believed that the spirit of Abraham Lincoln and his son Willie Todd Lincoln roamed the halls of the White House.
And do you have evidence of that?
Yes, I do. This has been documented for over 150 years.
Somebody has seen them there wandering through the White House halls?
Not just somebody, but some pretty impressive people. We're talking Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, talk about a no-nonsense president. Harry Truman, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, President Lyndon Johnson. In fact, Lyndon Johnson was overheard by White House staffers talking to Lincoln's spirit, and unfortunately that got out, and comedian Bob Hope took the ball and ran with that one.
So they then told other people that they felt that they had actually seen Abraham Lincoln in the White House?
Well, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, right after the U.S. entered the war, he knew he had to have a solid deal with the United States so that Britain and America together could triumph against Adolf Hitler. So Churchill flew from London to Washington. He was put up in the Lincoln bedroom. And the Lincoln bedroom, Barbara, it wasn't always a bedroom. It used to be an office. It was Abraham Lincoln's private office, and now it is decorated and it's filled with pieces from the Lincoln administration, including the bed that Willie Todd Lincoln died in. He died of scarlet fever when he was 11. So Winston Churchill insisted every afternoon on having a bath. And he was a quirky guy. So Churchill would get out of the bathtub and he walked into the Lincoln bedroom, completely naked, because he liked to walk around the room smoking a cigar, making notes for what he was going to be saying to Congress the next day, and there he's confronted with the spirit of Abraham Lincoln.
And how do demons actually masquerade like ghosts? They remember people because they were familiar with them. And guess what? After these people die, they can masquerade as them and as ghosts. Yeah, the thing is that a lot of you don't realize is demons are active every day, all the time. They don't have to portray these entities. They're out there already deceiving people through false doctrine, through feeding on your vain imaginations, through inspiring your aspirations. These are called familiar spirits. All right? They're familiar with you. They're familiar with all the things that you want, all the things that you think you need. Your beliefs that, oh, when you die, you can come back as a ghost. Now, that's, of course, like I said, that's not true. But that's a good deception. You got to remember, Satan is the father of lies.
I could move things without touching them, and I could make people stand away from me and command the demons to go get people and make them get pushed away.
You were taught concerning the things of the dark side of the supernatural at a very young age. Could you share some of that with us?
I was really involved with the Satanic Church every day. The high priest would come and get me, and they would take me to the church, and they would
How did you feel about that?
I felt really scared, but at the same time I liked the power that I had, that they taught, and I had inside of me, because everybody has gifts inside of them, and you can be influenced by the Holy Spirit or the familiar spirit, and I was totally influenced by the familiar spirit. I had Satanists around me, constantly following me.
You saw many very ugly things, like animals get sacrificed, even humans, and other really terrible things.
I was so numb to it, really.
How did you view Christians back then?
I hated them. Hearing those babies literally scream and cry. And then seeing their blood flow. It was horrible.
Rebecca, where did they get the babies?
Yeah, they have mothers that are expecting, that they hold in in the church, and they also have people that they kidnap and they impregnate them through whatever, and they get babies from everywhere.
Why is it that no one knows this?
Because there's Satanists in the police force and also in the government, the army. They're everywhere. They're even on the council of, yeah, the representatives of the United States also. And they're silenced because this is not being exposed because they don't want it to be exposed. Because they're really good at lying and hiding things.
Rebecca, what happens to the people that want to come out of Satanism?
They get killed. They get followed. They get taken. I don't know how to tell everybody that's out there that I came out, because I'm not sure if anybody's going to believe this. Yeah, warfare is real. We're born into a war. And yeah, you'd be very foolish to not to understand that, because demons are real and people are influenced by bad spirits and demonic activity, and they follow people like me around because, yeah, I know too much. And the blood of Jesus, yes, does protect me, don't get me wrong. I know who Jesus is, and I'm alive because of him to this day. But because I know where they are at, I'm going to expose it all.
So I go, no, I don't think so. Because God is God and Satan is not. And there is no demon that is going to come into this ground that we are on, because it's holy ground, because God wants to get this little girl saved. It is about her soul going to hell or to heaven. And that's why we were there. And so I knew before she even got there, because the darkness was so prevalent. Those Christians out there, you know what I'm talking about. You can feel it in your very being. And when she came onto the property, darkness, it was like hordes of hell were there. And yet there were angels bringing her in.
When I drove onto the property, there was angels everywhere, and I was freaking out. I thought I had overdosed on my heroin, really. And it was horrible. But at the same time, I felt a peace. It was weird. The door flings open without me touching it, because at the time I was influenced, of course, by the demonic activity that was living inside of me.
The front door flung open, and I wanted her to know immediately, I don't think so, babe. Because your darkness is not going to come into the light. Because she needed to know that God was God and that Satan was not.
She sits me down on the table, and I had all my garb on.
She had a very large marking on her arm, a tattoo, which stated who she was. And so what that meant was, see, we're all marked with a destiny. Whether you're a Christian or you're into Satanism, you're marked. So that when people saw her in the natural or by the spirit, they would know who she was, that she had great authority in the spirit realm.
She told me names and dates and things that nobody should have known.
Her eyes were so pitch black, it was like there was no white at all. And as I started talking to her, this little girl cried out.
The demons were taking over me, and I screamed, please help me, with all that I could, because I couldn't be influenced. I couldn't sit under the anointing that she was having around her.
The Lord just chose to ride in on me as a donkey, just a vessel he uses. But she got saved that day.
She's like, well, I've got to go. You can either give their life to Jesus, or you can give your soul to Satan, and he'll drag your soul right to hell. And then she prayed for me, and then
she had a real hard time saying Jesus, because as soon as you speak the name Jesus, everything has to bow before him. And I knew that she was relinquishing all power of darkness when she said his name. And at first it was like, oh, and she couldn't speak it. And I said, you will say his name, Jesus, now. And as soon as I said that, it was like the hordes pulled back, and she screamed the name of Jesus. and this shot, I'm telling you, it was like a shaft of light hit her. And she was totally transformed.
She gave me a deliverance, and I remember her touching my forehead and putting a cross symbol, and I blacked out, and then I woke up, and I felt like 90% of my body was left me. And I was filled with the Holy Spirit, and I started speaking in tongues, and I was drunk also.
We let Satan know that the blood of Christ is over this child, and every door that was open, you have no authority to come back in. And then she got baptized immediately in the Holy Spirit. And then we had to carry her out. She was speaking in tongues, and she was laughing and weeping. And I know that's what Jesus sees every time someone comes out of darkness into the light. You don't have to come out of that type of a darkness. But whatever prison you're in, when you come out of darkness into the light, you'll know that you are free and that you are loved. And your whole life changes. And that's what happened to our girl. I don't believe that sometimes we really understand the fullness of the cross and what Jesus did on that cross. God is real. He has given us all authority in his church, but unfortunately, because we make pretend, well, Satan can't be real, and people go, well, I started praying and fasting, and we started praying for, our school, and all hell broke loose. And I'm like, yeah, and if you're going through hell, don't hold it, but if you're going through hell, don't stop. Because if we think that the battle's easy, we would be very, very mistaken. We have got to persevere through, run the race, and to grab as many that are in darkness and bring them into the light. That is the commissioning of the church.
Thank you for watching. We would like to thank our viewers and subscribers for watching our videos. We appreciate all the encouragement and feedback. This channel really means so much to us. Our prayers are with you all. Please support Shattered Paradise by purchasing a t-shirt from our shop, Apparel Dime, on Spreadshirt.com. Now you can wear your faith on your sleeve. The shop features faith-based t-shirts for men, women, and kids. The link is in the description below. Thank you, and God bless.